do you know how late Commissioner Peng will be here?
He said 30 to 60 minutes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we won't wait for him.
Don't wait for him.
Oh, well, we don't have to, because he's here earlier than he thought. Well, let's wait 2 minutes for Commissioner Barnes, and then if he doesn't show up, we'll just go ahead and go. We have a quorum anyway. Because we probably need to move with some dispatch to get through everything tonight, I guess. Although there's no obvious public comment yet.
You have about 10 remote attendees.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, first item.
Commissioner Chomsky,
Present.
Commissioner Javindel, Commissioner McCroskey,
Here.
Commissioner Peng,
Present.
Commissioner Von Neidingen,
Present.
Chair Vigil McClanahan.
Present.
Commissioner Barnes is absent.
All right. Land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make
Microphone turn on?
I turned it off. Sorry, should I do it again or was I loud enough? I don't think I was loud enough. Should we just go?
At your pleasure.
I think we'll just go on. Sorry for the inadequate volume. All right, so now we're on to public comment unrelated to items on the agenda.
No one in the room. I see one hand raised so far. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Good evening, transportation. Everything to do with the vehicles we drive. So I was wondering where to charge my Tesla in Albany. Had a Tesla for a couple months. I got free unlimited supercharging for life. So good thing I never pay for gas or never have to pay to charge my car ever again. But there's nowhere to charge in Albany. I gotta go use a supercharger at Ranch 99, which is in Contra Costa County, by the way. I gotta go use a supercharger at El Cerrito Plaza. Oh, Contra Costa County, by the way. Huh. So 2035, they're not even gonna sell gas-powered cars anymore in California. They're only gonna sell electric vehicles. So where's the infrastructure? Are we ahead or are we behind? Because we still have 10 years. But I feel like we're already behind. Because agendas take a while, and trust me, I know I know how long things take in Albany to pass on agendas. Things take 2-3 years from once you get an idea started sometimes. So I'm just wondering if we could go ahead and start developing policies and get this thing organized to where parking spaces on Solano, to where you could park, and while you're in a restaurant for half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, your car's charging. Or when you're grocery shopping, that's what I do. I gotta go grocery shopping over El Cerrito Plaza now. Charge my car while I'm shopping. It's just convenient. And I'll tell you what, these electric cars, these Teslas, this is so great. I mean, to not have exhaust fumes around, to not have to go to a gas station and touch these greasy, gassy gas pumps. I don't know. I'm just really excited about this electric car thing. You know, when I plug in my Tesla, there's no sign that says, you know, you may catch cancer. You pull into a gas station, there's warning labels all over the place. Gas, oil, don't touch it, you're gonna get cancer, you know? So the point is infrastructure. I just wanna see Albany ahead of the game. I know we had 6 electric chargers that were supposed to be installed around Albany years ago, but where are they? Supposed to be one at the City Hall, Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do you have any updates on, this is before my time, the state of the public chargers. Do you have any comment on the issue, or?
The Climate Action Committee has discussed that recently, and I think they made a recommendation, so there should be a council discussion forthcoming.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other hands up?
Any hands up?
Nope. That was the only one.
All right. I suppose we're on to the presentation of the collisions and citation data.
One moment.
Oh, are you here for public comment on something on or off the agenda? Okay. Yes, it is. Well, we're in the portion of the meeting where people comment about things that are not on the agenda, and I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to speak if you were talking about something that's not on the agenda. But your item is on the agenda in a few minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So reporting on police data from the month of February, there was 1 pedestrian-involved collision. I've got a very slow moving computer. There was 0 bicycle-involved collisions. See if I can get my slides to advance here.
Fortunately, 0 is easy to visualize.
There we go. And we had 16 total collisions, 4 of which were injury collisions. Apologies. There were 40 citations issued and 5 DUI arrests were made. That concludes the report.
On to the consent calendar, item 4.1.
So there are two consent calendar items. Unless someone wishes to discuss either of them individually, they could be acted upon as one item.
Okay.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Do you need a roll call, or is anyone opposed? Okay.
Unanimous approval. Okay.
All right, so are we on to, do we need to individually vote on the minutes, or?
Those were
Part of the consent calendar.
Right, okay, sorry. I'll get the hang of it soon enough, I promise. All right, on to item 5.
One is the first of 3 traffic calming discussion items. And I will slowly work to bring up a few slides here. So the City of Albany traffic calming policy prescribes a process for residents to petition for traffic calming measures on their block and the criteria by which the city evaluates those requests. The most common measures have been speed humps and speed tables. They're relatively cost effective and easier to implement than other measures. Soft striping treatments have been recommended at some locations as well in the past. In 2021, the traffic calming policy was updated under recommendation by the commission, developed by the commission, and then approved by city council. And this shifted the evaluation from looking at what's called the 85th percentile speed, the speed at which 15% of vehicles are traveling faster and 85% are traveling lower, and restricted traffic calming to roadways with volumes of less than 3,000 average daily traffic, and shifted to speeding vehicle volumes being the metric by which we prioritize. So the commission looked at high speeds and looked at assigning higher risks associated with higher speeds, and found that really the measure of the number of vehicles traveling over 25 miles per hour was a pretty simple and straightforward proxy for that more complicated calculations based on different speed intervals, and that those were really strongly correlated. So the policy set looking at the number of vehicles traveling over the speed limit as the metric by which we prioritize traffic calming. And it did away with the 3,000 vehicle average daily traffic maximum. Since the 2022, the final locks that had been reviewed and approved prior to that update have been installed, and this included intersection treatment at 700 Carmel and a crossing, and 3 blocks with speed humps and speed tables, 500 and 1,000 blocks of Masonic, and the 1,000 block of Key Route. In 2022, the commission reviewed a number of traffic surveys and traffic calming requests and recommended 3 locations that are being discussed tonight for traffic calming measures and the Santa Fe corridor. So city staff is working with our on-call consultants to look at the Santa Fe corridor currently, and we will be starting to talk with various city departments on what options are available for that corridor, and then talk to residents of the blocks before bringing it to the commission. So this month we're bringing the 3 discrete blocks, and we're working towards the Santa Fe corridor recommendation. So where are we in the process? We are now at step 6, Transportation Commission Design Review. The commission's already reviewed these 3 blocks and recommended them for traffic calming, and so this is us bringing back the specific traffic calming measure recommendations for these 3 locations. And after that, assuming that there is a recommendation tonight, they would be on the list of approved measures, and we would work with Public Works staff on developing them as a capital project for implementation. And with that, I'll hand it over. You met Ben briefly last month. He is now starting to prepare materials. You saw some materials from him in your packet, and we'll give the detailed presentation on these.
Thanks, Justin. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go through all 3 recommendations, staff recommendations at once, and then we'll leave it to questions at the end. So starting with the 800 block of Key Route Boulevard. So in June of 2022, the Transportation Commission reviewed a request by residents to calm traffic here. They reviewed speed surveys and directed staff to analyze traffic calming measures on this block. So in the speed survey, it was found that over 1,200 vehicles would speed on a daily basis per the survey, out of over 3,300 vehicles traveling down the street. Next slide. So just a little bit about the characteristics. According to the Albany general plan, this is a minor arterial. That is the 800 block of Key Route. It is adjacent to Solano Avenue. It's about 770 feet long, and it's a one-way street in either direction with a wide median in between. Per the City of Albany's traffic calming guidance, the guidance recommends 2 to 3 speed humps for blocks between 700 and 850 feet, which this falls within. Installing these at intervals of 250 to 300 feet, and not installing within 100 feet of an intersection. So staff went out and did an assessment of the street and came up with 2 options for potential speed humps or tables. This is one of the iterations with 808, 810, between 808 and 810 Key Route. On the western side, 820 and 822 Key Route, and 842 on the western side, then 813, and then between 839 and 841 Key Route on the eastern side. And you can look here and see the distances. This is the number of feet between proposed speed humps or tables and intersections. Option B had the same iteration on the western side of this block, but shifted the speed humps on the eastern side just as a potential secondary iteration that was a little bit more in line with the recommendations from the City of Albany's speed hump guidance. So you'll see here everything falls within 250 to 350 feet apart from each other from between the speed humps or tables, and then over 100 feet from the intersections. Just a little bit about speed humps and tables. The City of Albany has been shifting toward speed tables, which you can kind of see the cross-section on the bottom here. They're about 18 feet long versus, 22 feet long versus a speed hump, which is 12 feet long. The speed table kind of provides for a more consistent speed along the street while also slowing traffic down, whereas a speed hump we found has kind of created more of a stop and start type of travel pattern along the street. So speed tables have been deemed to be the preferred street treatment along streets in Albany. So we're shifting more towards speed tables. So these speed tables require 22 feet for the table themselves, and then 2 feet on either side for a total of 26 feet. So we, the assessment here when we look at the street is finding driveway space, spaces between driveway space. So we're not encroaching upon the driveway. So finding that 26 feet and making sure there are no manholes or other kind of sewer-related work that's happening. So we're not paving over anything like that. So next slide. So the recommendation, just because it was a little bit more in line with the guidance, was to install speed tables between 808 and 810 on the southbound side, between 820 and 822 key route on the southbound side, and then at 842 key route on the southbound side, and then, I'm sorry, on the westbound side, and then southbound side on the west side, and then on the northbound side on the east side of the street, 835 key route and at 813 key route Boulevard. So I think we'll leave it at that and continue with the...
Let's go ahead and take them one at a time.
Sure. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions back to the general presentation before we get into the specifics of key route. Can you go back to the slide that showed a graph of speed versus risk? Yeah, I was interested in that graph on the right, and I didn't exactly understand what it was. Can you just talk through it a bit?
Yeah, this pulls from some analysis that a subcommittee of the commission did to look at more detailed slices of speeds of vehicles within several of the blocks that we had surveys for, and to look at the increased risk of severe or fatal injury associated with those faster speeds, and to take 5-mile-per-hour slices of profiles of speeds on a street to look and really weight the really fast speeding cars on that street. But in looking at that and looking at several of the different blocks that we had measurements for, it came to the same results of just taking a much simpler, this is the number of vehicles traveling over 25.
Where was the risk number coming from?
It was coming from incidents of severe and fatal injury from other studies associated with faster vehicles.
So those points on the graph, the filled in circles, don't represent locations in Albany necessarily. They represent like locations that were studied in general?
I'd have to pull back where I pulled this graphic from. We looked at specific blocks within Albany, but we used
there aren't
information of the risk associated with different speeds from outside sources.
Okay, yeah, because there aren't enough collisions in Albany to really get valid statistics. Okay, so I guess I'll need to go back and look at the source if I want more about that, but it was a really interesting graph. I think you said that these projects that you're bringing to us now are the first group of traffic calming projects that are based on this 2021 policy. Is that
That's correct?
Okay. And does the policy declare like a cutoff that if you exceed this amount of risk, then you get traffic calming, and if you don't, then you don't? Or is it more a prioritization that whichever blocks have the highest number according to this policy are the ones that get attention first?
The latter. We moved away from a yes or no cutoff to a prioritization based on that
Okay.
number.
So does that mean that according to the policy, every block in the city is potentially eligible for traffic calming, and it's just a matter of what order we get to them in?
That's correct.
Okay.
Except there is still specific discussion of major arterial bus routes, truck routes. So it's not every street, but it's
Okay.
most of the
So
streets.
the streets in this group, some of them are classified as minor arterial, and that's kind of the highest level at which we would consider
That's correct.
traffic. So, okay. And the major arterials are in Solano and San Pablo, is that correct?
And Buchanan,
Buchanan, yeah.
and with bus and truck routes, I think Pierce was added to that
Okay.
for the Transbay bus, but essentially that's the streets that are not.
But like all of
policy.
Santa Fe and Masonic are minor arterials and are treated the same as neighborhood streets for the purposes of this policy.
Portions of Masonic and Key Route are minor arterials, but not all of both of those. All of Santa Fe under our general plan is actually considered a collector,
Collector.
but the volumes on both of those are pretty similar.
Okay, but those designations don't give them any different treatment from neighborhood streets according to this policy?
Not in terms of prioritization, but because Santa Fe is an entire corridor that we're looking at, we are going to be looking at whether there are other options we want to consider for that before we
Okay. So
recommend.
the prioritization determines how soon we look at it, and then your evaluation of what treatment we should recommend for it might depend on whether it is a regional, a boulevard of regional importance for.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we know if the old rules that we used before 2021 would have resulted in us choosing different blocks to prioritize right now? I'm just curious the impact of the change in rules.
The main impact for this first round is higher volume streets. So we're looking at Key Route and we're looking at Masonic. We have Santa Fe coming. Those were over the 3,000 vehicle volume threshold in the old policy. So I think at least the 800 block of Key Route requested under the old policy and did not qualify at that time.
Okay, so we really are seeing some very clear differences from what we would have done under the old policy then. All of these would have been completely excluded under the old policy. Interesting.
800 Taylor, the exception we'll get to a future item. It did come in under the old policy for soft treatment and requested to be looked at again under the new policy.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, I know that some of the streets that we're discussing tonight do have treatments already in place on some of their blocks. Is that not necessarily Taylor, but both Key Route and Masonic already have some blocks that have been treated?
That's
Right?
correct.
And so the speed humps we're adding aren't really changing the nature of the street. They're kind of filling in gaps or extending a treatment that has already begun on other parts of the street. Okay.
For the most part, so we can talk about Masonic next. I would say for Key Route, there currently are speed humps adjacent to the high school that were put in, I think, with old construction project, and the south of Solano block, where it's really a different character street, had, I think, treatment under the old policy. So it is
Okay.
this is going to be the first block that's coming in of the boulevard portion of Key Route under traffic calming.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Thanks.
So you need to You could tell her that she'll have a chance to speak.
Yeah, there will be a chance to speak after, when we get to the next, on the 900 block. If you have are questions from the public and comments separate,
So
or?
as soon as you wrap up commission questions, then you can open it up for the public for any comment or question on this item. So I would say, if
Is this about this item in particular, the Masonic item, or just traffic calming in general? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
She's not being picked up at all.
Yeah, I'll repeat her question in a minute. Okay, thank you. Are there any other commissioner questions?
I have questions.
All right.
So you will get a chance to stand up at the mic and ask your questions. We're gonna have
In just a minute.
commission questions first, and then you'll get a turn.
Apologies, I'm also unfamiliar with the procedure. This is my second meeting as chair. So I'm sorry about not clarifying that immediately. So we'll go to the next commissioner question, and then we'll get to the public question, okay? Thank you.
So I'm curious about how these speed tables are constructed, whether they're gutter to gutter, and how they will relate to our other plans on Key Route for creating bike facilities, and both physically and temporally in terms of installation.
they are not gutter to, I mean, they leave space for water flow on the sides, so they don't go all the way to the curb. They can be designed to be narrower and leave a flat space for a cyclist. If there's, a cycling lane as is envisioned, and for Key Route, the challenge can be if it encourages vehicles to use that as well. So we haven't had a lot of feedback on our speed tables being an impediment to cyclists. But if we were going to consider a cyclist channel, we would need some other component of the speed table, I think, treatment to discourage motor vehicle use of the same aisle. So I think the current recommendation would be to do our speed table in terms of temporal installation. That's to be determined once we know the recommendation. And I don't know when the Key Route resurfacing is going to happen at this point, so it's possible that we would do traffic calming in advance of the road work. I don't know.
If the speed humps were installed before the resurfacing, wouldn't they have to be reinstalled?
If as is currently envisioned, it's road reconstruction, yeah, they would be reinstalled at a future time with the reconstruction project.
Thank you.
Similar question. Would you please explain to me again why this speed table works better than the bumps? Because just based on my observation on the Masonic, it seems like the bumps do more damage to speeding cars, which in some way is what we wanted, right? People learn from the hard way, and then it seems the table create a smoother transition for speeding cars, just by observation, but maybe there's some physics to it. And then also, are there already bumps installed on the 800 blocks? So no. But in the future, will we face circumstances where on the street there's always already a bump, but we're trying to create a table? I don't know, that mixture would create the kind of desired traffic pattern you were aiming for. That's more of course, because on your presentation you were saying that speed table would help achieve a certain pattern that we desire compared to the stop and go, which were created by the bumps. So that's kind of my question.
Yeah, it's really, they have different design speeds, and so the idea that's been discussed previously is, folks are interested in people going the speed limit or under the speed limit, but not needing to slow down to 15 miles per hour if that's not our speed for that roadway. So the idea is that if we do speed tables that are designed for folks to really slow down to 25, and we keep them going a steady 25 versus needing to slow more substantially down than our speed limit on the roadway, and then the pressure to speed right back up. So that's the discussion we've had in the past. It varies based on each specific installation, how fine-tuned you can be, and different vehicles have different, clearances and different requirements for how slow they need to go to safely maneuver over it. So there's only so much fine-tuning you can do with that, but that's the intent, is that we want people to go under the speed limit, but not need to slow substantially below that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Is there any adjustment to the guidance needed given the increasing preponderance of SUVs and higher clearance vehicles? Because I've seen, like F-250s go over the speed humps on my block without even a pause at 30 miles an hour.
With the wider variation in size of vehicles, it just becomes a limitation on this as our treatment method.
Okay.
You're still going to have a smaller vehicle on the road as well, and so you can't just build it towards making sure that the really high clearance vehicle has to go the speed you're designing for.
All right. Are we all done with our questions? Do you want to come up to the mic and re-ask your question? It does overlap a little bit with Commissioner Pang's, but if you'd like to ask again, we can have staff address any particular concerns you might have now.
You have to come to the mic so that everyone can hear.
It's for the recording and for
And also so all of us can hear you clearly.
Yeah. You might need to press the button if the green light is not on the mic.
Yeah, earlier I was asking about the.
I'll go check.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's my first time to learn that phrase. I didn't understand what.
Sorry.
Start again.
That's okay.
Okay. Because this evening is my first time to learn the phrase speed table. And I saw the drawing there a little bit. It looks like the three-dimensional flat box. It doesn't have the ramp.
It does.
Yeah, so how does the table help the speed? I mean to calm down the speed. That's something new I would like to learn. That's it.
Thank you. Do one of you want to address the theory there?
Respond to that. We have at least one comment online as well.
Okay. I think we're going to take one more public comment, and then we'll come back and address it.
Francesco Papalia, go ahead.
Francesco, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute.
There we go.
Am I-
There we go.
Okay, thank you. I'm on my phone, so it's a little different. I live on the 800 block. This is a great idea because cars really speed, particularly during rush hour. As a matter of fact, all the way up to El Cerrito and then past there. And in El Cerrito too, which I just experienced when I walked up the green strip this evening, just by chance, and it was ridiculous. And yes, the trucks were even blasting. But I want to clarify, if I can, from the commission about what is the plan for the bike lane, particularly on the east side. Are you still planning on trying to eliminate like 100 parking spaces from Solano Avenue all the way up to the high school? Because that's such a terrible idea. Those spaces are desperately needed for parking on Solano, desperately needed for all events at the high school, Memorial Park, particularly in the wintertime when it's raining. If you're good, and so I heard one of the members say that the plans are, I know on the west side, it's not going to eliminate any parking, but on the east side, if you still plan to eliminate the parking, it's just going to exacerbate the speed. People, when there's no cars parked there at all, they're just going to have no impediment to speed past the 800 block. You're going to end up having to put speed bumps all the way along, because once you eliminate the parking on that side, it becomes kind of a speedway. And I know this because we've seen people when we've had picnics on the green strip on a Sunday, and people come tearing down there if there's no one parked on the green strip side of the east side of Key Route. So we need more things to slow traffic on that area. I'm not sure why people don't use Masonic instead to get through, but this is a major thoroughfare, particularly at rush hour. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
You have one more hand raised now.
Okay.
Amy Smolens, go ahead.
Hi there. My partner, who actually just happened to have spoken, lives on the 800 block of Key Route. So literally every day I see people speeding from Solano to Washington. Maybe, just maybe, they pause at the stop sign on Washington and occasionally they yield to pedestrians. This is a major route for kids walking to and from school in the morning and at lunchtime. They're walking to Kim's and Ori and after school. I mean, it's just always foot traffic. And slowing speeding cars down is really a necessity, safety necessity. Drivers all over Albany seem to be able to speed with impunity because they know there's no traffic enforcement to reduce speeding or reduce running stop signs or red lights. So traffic calming measures on the 800 block of Key Route and all of Albany for that matter are important to making walking and biking safer for people of all ages. That's part of our active transportation plan to reduce motor vehicles, mile traveled, and greenhouse gas emissions, and make it easier for people to use active transportation. As far as the question that Commissioner McCroskey mentioned, as a cyclist, it definitely helps when the speed bumps have a space for bike tires. I've experienced those before, rather than sending a young kid biking over a speed hump flying. So if they can have those little notches for bike tires, that definitely helps, and they're too small for car tires to go through. Thank you.
right, thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else?
No more hands raised.
Okay. Does staff want to address the questions asked about the theory of speed tables versus speed humps?
Yeah, let me pull that slide referenced back up. So the design difference between the speed hump and the speed table is really in that middle section that's flat at the top. So the speed hump rises 3.5 inches over 6 feet and then goes back down to the grade of the street over another 6 feet. So it's 6 feet of length heading up and then 6 feet heading back down. For the speed table, it's that 6 feet over 6 feet going up to 3.5 inches above the road, and then it's flat for 10 feet, and then it starts going back down. So it's a longer profile up, flat, and back down compared to the speed hump.
Okay, so actually, either end has a ramp.
That's correct.
Can I say something? Yeah. This is a section.
I just thought it is a box. I said, how could a box help reducing the speed?
Oh, now I understand the question.
So there are ramps on either side.
Yeah, like
That will help counting the speed. Now I understand. So after all, the difference between the speed
Turn this into a public
I know, okay. I'll-
and the pump is that the pump is a
all right. Okay, go ahead.
So I've got some comments to make. And I'll start with this right here because as staff pointed out, the speed humps versus the speed tables, especially if the speed humps are made overly aggressive, you do get, if they're designed for 10 miles an hour, no one's going to keep going 10 miles an hour down the whole street. They're going to speed back up. So you get the acceleration, deceleration rather than the consistent speed, which is great to have more consistent, and you try to get people to behave the way we want them to behave in the first place. The other part that we didn't touch on is that fire engines, especially when they're carrying water for pumping, can damage their frames when they drive over speed humps. Because they have a longer wheelbase, speed tables are more forgiving for the emergency vehicles, and so they're less likely to suffer damage, so it helps our emergency response time that they can travel at a more reasonable speed over the speed table than the speed hump. So I think that's, many cities have said we're not going to accept speed humps anymore, we only do speed tables. So I think it's a fine device to use because it achieves our needs. The question about the barrier, I should say, in terms of the bike lane, if and when we have a bike lane and a speed hump, certainly when I ride my bike over the speed humps on Masonic, those don't cause me any trouble. But I can understand that, depending on the individual cyclist, it might be a concern. So certainly when a bike lane is installed, we could make sure that the bike lane is clear or flat or has cut-throughs. The key then, of course, is to keep cars from swerving into the bike lane. So at that point, you would just design it with some kind of barrier. And again, that's very design dependent. If you had a parking buffered bike lane, the parking's going to keep cars from swerving over. If not, you might use some kind of bollards or other treatments. So I think it's a good question, but it's not part of this action. So I think that the proposal looks good. The spacing is good to kind of keep that consistent speed, which is what we want. So want to thank staff for the work on this. In terms of the questions on the new policy versus the old policy, Preston, Jordan, and I were the ones who worked on that. And kind of, if we had a street with very low volumes and half the cars went really fast, it would qualify. And that might be 10 cars and 5 of them were speeding versus another street with 2,000 cars that had only a quarter speeding, but that's 500 cars going fast. So the whole idea of the more cars over 25 miles an hour that you've got, the more risk exposure you've got for pedestrians and for collisions. That was really a big part of it. And the whole previous criteria of the 85th percentile speed was one of resource management. It wasn't that, oh, if you're not 85th percentile 30, you don't have a problem. It's like, you got a problem, but these people have a bigger problem. Now we're just measuring that differently, and we're not doing the yes versus no. We're saying, how bad is your problem based on the number of speeding vehicles, and we're just going to start at those according to the resources we got and work our way down the list. So, that seems more fair, more reasonable, and you're not like, oh, I just missed it and I get nothing, or I just get paint. So our hope in changing the policy was essentially to achieve something that was going to give more opportunity for more streets to participate. So again, thanks for the presentation, great information, and I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Thank you for the clarifications, the history there.
I have some comments and a counterpoint on one of the items.
Are we at the, so we're on to discussion of the, okay. Go ahead.
So yes, staff's recommendation for placement sounds great. And thanks for laying that out very clearly with the numbers and all that. That was very communicative. I have actually had good experiences with the speed tables in terms of bicycling. And I don't believe in cut-through slots for bicycles, because I often use bikes that have trailers or tricycles, and training wheels certainly wouldn't fit. So don't use training wheels anyway. Different topic. So when Berkeley installed speed tables on Santa Fe south of Gilman, on a bikeway, the idea was that that would keep speeds at a relatively low rate and allow cyclists to not be jostled overly much. And I think that's been fairly successful. Another Albany example of a speed table, I think, is on Masonic, close to the senior center, north of Solano. I think that's a speed table, right? So this is not new to Albany, and it's pretty straightforward. So I'm certainly in favor of this plan. I think it's safer to have the speed table go across the roadway and not have a cutout for bicyclists. Putting in bollards, trying to compensate for a cutout, it just makes everything more complicated, and then could interfere with parking and driveway access. And let's keep it simple unless there are specific problems. We're not reviewing the other traffic plans for Key Route tonight, just looking at these speed tables. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I do find it interesting that with the new policy, we're addressing these fairly major streets first. And I can see the rationale for that these are the streets that have, in an objective sense, there's more danger from the driving on these busy streets than there is from the driving on neighborhood streets. But it makes me a little nervous to think about putting in aggressive treatments on these major streets and leaving the minor streets untreated, and encouraging drivers to say, well, I don't like driving on Masonic or Santa Fe anymore because it's too bumpy, so I'm going to take some other small neighborhood street instead. I just want to make sure we don't go overboard in causing that kind of shift. Because, I mean, I assume there's some rationale in the way the city's grid is laid out that some of the streets are designated as collectors or minor arterials, and that we want people to keep using those streets more and not to use the small neighborhood streets as an alternative to them. But I think the speed tables can be a good compromise for that, as long as we don't start putting in the aggressive speed humps like we've had in some places in the past. I think those, you know, there is something good about getting people to slow down more, but if you do that on a major street, not only do you have this slowing and speeding behavior that Fareed described, but you also have a street that's so inconvenient that it stops functioning as a major street, and then some of the other streets we risk making some of the other streets busier. So I think especially with our focus tonight on these major streets, it's especially important to aim for the tables rather than the humps. And it is troublesome to think that the most dangerous cars of all, the F-250s, the big SUVs, the Lincoln Navigators out there, are going to be able to go over these tables at 28 or 30 miles an hour, because that's the way they're built, and they're the ones that are going to cause the most damage if they hit somebody. I don't know that there's a great solution to that. So I guess...
Not at the local level, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess in the end I support the plan as proposed with speed tables. And I just wanted to draw attention to some of the other public comments we got in email. They were almost universally in favor of the treatments. The only one that was not in favor made an interesting argument, which is not to say that there's anything wrong with the treatment we were proposing, but just that it wasn't needed and the city's resources should go to other kinds of road repairs instead. But even that person didn't say that these repairs would cause any harm, that these treatments would cause any harm. So I think there's pretty strong support throughout the community.
Do you have any other comments?
Are the tables more expensive than the bumps? I know we're gonna change it, but it's $40,000 for pump, so this is $80,000?
I don't know the numbers, but it's, 10 feet
Wider, longer.
longer, so it's more asphalt.
Okay.
Once you have the truck there to pour it, it's not like double the cost, right? If it's double the asphalt, it's not double the cost.
Yeah, that's mobilization for this small of an amount of asphalt is a big percentage of the cost versus the amount of material that you're putting in the road.
It seems like part of the challenge of a speed table is finding a place where you can fit it. Like you always have these constraints of driveways and distance from intersections and sewer access and all these things. But if you've succeeded in finding a solution that works, that has enough room for the speed tables, then...
It's an easier task on Masonic, where driveways are only on one side, and on Key Route, where driveways are only on one side, than many other of our streets.
Okay, good point, yeah.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the staff recommendation for the 800 block of Key Route.
I'll second that.
Roll call. Sorry. Commissioner Chomsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Javandel,
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Peng,
Yes.
Commissioner Von Nidigan,
Yes.
Chair Vihil McClanahan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, on to 5-2, 900 block Masonic.
Okay, moving on to 900 block of Masonic. Just a little bit about the background. At the same meeting, the Transportation Commission reviewed a request by residents to calm traffic here. reviewed speed surveys at the meeting and directed staff to analyze traffic calming measures. Here we see 2,787 average weekday vehicles traveling over 25 miles per hour out of almost 5,000 vehicles. Next slide. Street characteristics. So Masonic is also classified as a minor arterial in the Albany General Plan. It is a bicycle route. It is between two signalized intersections. It's 1,000 feet in length, and it is a two-way street with homes on the west side and the Ohlone Greenway on the east side. Traffic calming guidance recommends 3 to 4 speed humps for or tables for blocks over 950 feet. Again, installing between at intervals of 250 to 350 feet, and not installing within 100 feet of the intersection. So again, we looked at 2 options here, option A and option B. And so at 910, 936, and 962 Masonic. Next slide, we've got some, this is the distance between the proposed humps or tables. And then option B, we looked at 912, 936, and 950 Masonic. And here we see the distance between those 3 proposed humps or tables. We walked through the kind of difference between speed humps and tables in the last slide, but again, because of the distance between the humps or tables and the 2 iterations, we are recommending the option B, the second option, just because it's a more consistent distance between the humps or tables. So we're recommending speed tables, once again, at 912 Masonic, 936 Masonic, and 950 Masonic, along with striping and signage to be added to the list of approved traffic calming program installations.
All right, do we have any commissioner questions? I have one, which is, are these to be full width table treatments? Okay.
Yes.
Just since there's often a big strip of missing parking or people not parking on the Greenway side. I suspect that's one of the reasons we're getting such fast speeds there. We don't want to make sure that we don't have a gap there for people to shoot up. Okay.
I don't know if you noticed, but there's a block of red curbing to protect some utility access on the Greenway side.
Okay.
So that there's often a long ways of non-parking because of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Public comment? You want to do in-person first and then online, or the other way around? All right, ma'am, did you have a public comment about this particular block?
Yes.
If you... Please
come to the mic.
Please come to the mic so we can hear you, and the recording can pick you up.
Yeah, I have a question. That's just it got something with the kind of a violation of the direction of driving on Masonic, because some cars, when they drive towards Solano Avenue, they tend to cross the double yellow line, get to the opposite side, then rush to Solano Avenue, make a quick left turn. I almost got hit by that kind of situation twice when I backed out from the driveway. Actually, the road was clear, but on the opposite side, right next to the BART overpass, there's a long line of cars stopped by the red lights at Solano Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So some cars at a little bit far back, maybe the third car, fourth car, they want to make a left turn on Solano Avenue. So they just drive across the double yellow line to the wrong side, speed to Solano Avenue, then make a quick left turn because they don't want to wait till they get to the crossroad, then make a left turn that way. So when your first saw is clear, you back out, then suddenly a car just rushed out across the double yellow line, got to the wrong side, then rushed to Solano Avenue. So since we are trying to calm down the noise, I know that's a goal of the main purpose of the meeting. But is there a way to stop such kind of violation? They just cross double yellow line, then rush to the crossroad on Solano Avenue, then make a very quick left turn to get on Solano Avenue. So usually they are.
Can I ask the,
Go ahead.
is this something that happens often?
Well, happened, I think, at least twice in about 2 months' time. So you average out, that's my experience, once
Yes.
a month.
That's what I'm asking, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe one of the solutions is to have those flex posts installed along the.
Yeah, we need to go to the other and then we
Oh,
can discuss it. Thanks. All right. Is there hands up online?
Yes, just 1 second.
Forgive us, we're having some computer challenges tonight.
It's not going to be covered, is it?
Bridget, go ahead.
Yes, hello, greetings. My name is Bridget Acuna. I'm a 15-year resident of the 900 block of Masonic. I'm a mother and a public health professional. In the years that I've lived on the street, there has been a significant traffic increase on our block with an inordinate burden that has increased in these years from other streets, including neighborhood streets. I want to emphasize that we are also a neighborhood, and the designation of minor arterial is a recent designation with little, if any, resident input. We matter too. I'm speaking to urge the Commission to implement traffic calming measures for the 900 block of Masonic. The 2021 traffic study found this block to be traveled far above safe speeds at a greater frequency than all other streets in Albany. Of the 23 streets most concerned about safety at the time, the 900 block was found to have a weekday average, like you pointed out, of 2,800 speeding cars above 25 miles per hour. And observing the block, there continues to be many super speeders, and that equates to 1 million more than 1 million speeders every year on our block alone. Since the time of the study, surrounding blocks, all with lower numbers of speeders, have received speed calming measures. The immediate proximity of this block to the Greenway and its crossing of Solano and Marin Avenues makes this block particularly vulnerable to the high number of speeding cars for the pedestrians, bicyclists using the Greenway, as well as residents on the street. We also have a library where many people are crossing the street. We also have many seniors parking on this block who cross the street on their way to the senior center a block away, as parking is more likely to be available on our block. Since this study, several more toddlers are being raised on the street. As you know, many more bicyclists are using the street. When observed, it is apparent that new bikers especially seem completely unaware of the risk while riding on the block. The Commission recommends speed tables for our block, and I greatly appreciate and support this recommendation as a resident. I'm very impressed with the science and the professionalism of the scientists on this commission. I support this recommendation as a resident and as a public health professional, and I also agree that there is no need for cut-through slots for bikes. As Mike pointed out, it may end up being actually more dangerous, in my opinion. Please protect the families of our blocks. We are a neighborhood, and please protect the community who comes through. Thank you for your efforts to keep all Albany streets safe for all, and I do greatly appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any other hands?
There's one additional hand right. Hold on. Francesco, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree that Masonic 900 block has a very, very similar profile of drivers and speeders as the 800 block. So I recommend that as well. And I use Masonic often now, traveling back to my home. I used to go down Key Route, the 900 block of Key Route, and then I finally realized that Masonic was a lot more relaxing because there weren't cars parked on both sides. And so I'm glad to have those there. But I also have an important question to ask that I hope you can clarify. Why can we not get more police to come to these places and give tickets to speeders? And give tickets to people who don't stop at the stop signs. Quickly, I'll try to tell you that around 20 years ago, I was driving down Key Route, and it turns into Ashbury. And when I came up to the Harding School up by Fairmont, I was speeding at around 40 miles an hour, and I got it pulled over, I got a ticket, and I had to spend 2 of my weekends, it was so long ago, in traffic school, and I hated it. I had to take the traffic school so I wouldn't get the points, but I did it, and I can assure you that in all of the time since I have lived there and gone down Ashbury, which is hundreds of times a year, if not more, I no longer speed because I learned my lesson. How can we get the police to facilitate the kind of disincentive that people would have to speed and to not stop at stop signs? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any other hands?
No more hands.
Does staff have any response to the questions about cutting around? That doesn't sound it would be answered by this particular treatment. Or
If it's vehicles approaching the signal, that we are proposing speed tables a couple 100 feet from the intersection, so it may help deter folks ramping up at that location. But beyond that, we'd have to follow up to understand the exact.
How long is the left turn pocket?
There is no left turn pocket. Is there? Oh, yeah.
For the,
But it's only like 30 or 40 feet long.
don't recall off the top of my head the design. I think it fits at least 3 vehicles.
But it's probably less than 100 feet. And our speed hump can't be within 100 feet of the intersection
That's right.
by policy. So there's no way for a speed, so the cars that are causing the problem for the commenter here are cars that want to make the left turn, but there's the pocket is not long enough for them. So they kind of extend, they illegally extend the left turn pocket by using the opposite side of the street, by crossing the double yellow line. But they're doing that at like 50 or 60 feet from the intersection, not at 150 feet from the intersection. So I don't think there's any way for a speed hump in particular to address the problem that this member of the public brought up. There may be other treatments we could consider. I don't know if they fit within tonight's agenda or not.
No, but we can tack it on to the end or request a follow-up from staff if we need to.
Okay.
All right, discussion?
I support option B. I especially like having the speed hump, the southern speed hump table, force of habit, north of the library parking lot driveway. That's a access point, and it also removes it from possible confusion around the lane separation close to the intersection. I think that's a good call. I don't think we have a solution for the cutting over, but it would be interesting to see what happens with that after traffic is somewhat calmed with speed tables on the block.
I would like to address the commenter about Albany Police. I think it's about like resource management. They do have people around, like in my neighborhood, close to the Albany Middle School. They are always there giving ticket to people who forget to stop, because there are like 3 stop signs in a very short intervals. So I almost see that every week they're giving tickets or find somebody who forget to stop.
So if you see a speeder, send them over towards the middle school.
Actually, I had one other thought. When we are considering the relative effectiveness of speed humps and speed tables and concerned about some larger cars being able to ignore the speed tables, do we have plans to collect speed data after these tables? Like if we approve this treatment with all tables, are we going to be able to collect speed data after they're installed and see if they really did solve the problem?
We have the capacity to collect after data.
Because I do want to make sure that the treatments we're selecting here are effective. Do we have other blocks in Albany that have been treated with tables only without any humps?
I'd have to check. We did before and after for Peralta, but I forget whether we did speed tables or speed humps for that block. The 1,000 block of Masonic that we did more recently was a combination. It has 2 tables and 1 speed hump where we didn't have the length to do a speed table.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see a follow-up study and make sure that the resources we're putting into this are having the effect we intend.
or at least having some effect.
Yeah,
I'm not sure you can define solve, but
right. I mean, it's not going to reduce the number of cars over 25 miles an hour to 0, but if it doesn't push it down significantly, then we may need to rethink.
well, I think we have to be careful. I mean, where you're setting the threshold for that. I mean, I would love it if there were many fewer cars going 35 and the same number of cars going 27 miles an hour. So,
That's not something that we measure according to the policy, at least, I mean, the raw
believe we
data
have in
is
the
there,
past.
but it's not, it doesn't come out in the report because of the way we,
just be careful how you ask the question.
yeah.
I've got a couple quick comments. Since it's come up a few times, just want to weigh in that I also agree that I would personally oppose any channels cut in speed tables. As I mentioned, as a cyclist riding over them, I've got no problem going over them. They're very comfortable. I always like to acknowledge that my experience as a cyclist is not the same as everyone else's, so I'm open to hearing other opinions, but I don't feel they're necessary. I also think that anytime you create unevenness in the pavement surface for a cyclist, that's a potential risk of something going wrong. So I would tend to avoid that, especially for bikes or a route that has bikes on it. And as we talked about before, if it encourages drivers to misuse the roadway, and swerve to try to take advantage of it, then that's potentially a downside. So I think we're probably all pretty much on the same page on that one. So I'll leave that there. The other comment, that little off topic, but in terms of speed enforcement, is that certainly we don't get as much speed enforcement as we might like, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So one of the things we can do as residents is to write to our state legislators and support them extending and expanding the automated speed enforcement pilot in the state, because the only way you're going to get every speeder is do it automatically, not wait for an officer to be there. And certainly putting that in front of schools and other sensitive locations is the most, I would think, publicly supportable place. So just a thought and a suggestion.
Hear, hear.
All right, do we have a motion?
I would like to move that we approve the staff recommendation for option B.
I'll second that.
Roll call. Commissioner Chomsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Javando,
Yes.
Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Peng,
Yes.
Commissioner Von Neidingen,
Yes.
Chair Viho McClanahan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
If I may, I'm going to recuse myself from this next section because I live within 500 feet of Taylor Street.
All right. Should we go into the plan for 5-3?
Okay. Thanks for sticking with us. We're at our third and final traffic calming recommendation for the evening. This is for the 900 block of Taylor Street. And to Commissioner Chomsky's point, this was a street that has received some level of traffic calming before, and there was a before and after analysis done. So I will speak to that right now. So in 2022, Taylor Street received parking lane edge lines and speed limit stencils along the street. This was in an effort to kind of narrow the visual space of the street in an effort to slow traffic down. The number of vehicles traveling over 25 miles per hour and the total traffic saw little change before and after. Next slide. So you'll see here that the traffic average day daily traffic stayed about the same, and the before and after analysis, as well as the average weekday traffic over 25 miles per hour. So at the June 2022 commission meeting, the Transportation Commission reviewed this speed survey data and directed staff to analyze additional traffic calming measures along the block. Next slide. So just a little bit about the street characteristics of Taylor Street. It is 500 feet long. It is a two-way street between Buchanan and Solano, and the total slope, average slope of the street is 12.4% in grade. Guidance, traffic calming guidance recommends 2 speed humps or tables for blocks between 450 to 700 feet, again, at intervals of between 250 and 350 feet and not closer than 100 feet from intersections. There's some additional guidance here for streets with slopes of over 8% grade. And I'll wait for the slide to pop up. We're continuing to have some computer difficulties. Oh, great. So federal guidance recommends speed humps or tables are installed along streets of grades of 8% or less. The slope on Taylor Street is just below 8% between Buchanan Street and 932 Taylor Street. North of 932 Taylor, the slope increases significantly to around 15% grade. And so therefore, for this particular street, staff is only recommending 1 speed table. So at the next slide, we have the location of 932 Taylor Street. The next slide shows the distance between that address and the intersections. And again, there's a slide about the difference between speed humps and tables. And the recommendation from staff is that we install 1 speed table at 932 Taylor Street, along with striping and signage to be added to the list of approved traffic calming program installations.
Do we have any commission questions?
Yeah, so I was looking at the first slides when you talk about like the stencil, the painting of the kind of the parking failed to yield any results. I was measuring it. It's still so full because those street between the lines are 16 feet wide. I'm wondering part of the reason maybe the reason it failed to slow down the traffic is that it didn't put a center line over there, because visually that will basically, it's 8 foot and 8 foot, right? It's significantly narrow the speed and might psychologically impact the driver and let them slow down. So I'm wondering if that's one additional approach to help reduce the speed on top of what you have over there.
Any other questions?
I was interested in the difference in slope. Is that a sudden change in slope or a gradual change in slope?
It's rather sudden.
And is it right at the 932 location where you're recommending the hump?
It's actually just north.
So the hump is in the gentler grade section, but near the north end of it.
That's
And
correct.
The change in slope is a little bit north of. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
So I suppose I go last. Is there anybody else? So the high speeds here are probably, we're assuming they're because there are people headed southbound coming down the slope, speeding up too fast.
Actually, most of the volume is northbound traffic.
So it's people gunning it up
And
there.
so I don't remember if we broke out the speed profile of north and south, but definitely the volume is mostly north. And per the residents of the block, it's used as a cut through to get over to Solano from Buchanan in advance of the lights for folks heading eastbound, and that people speed up to then proceed up the hill, up the slope, north of where we would be, north of the flatter section.
Is there any potential, given that, is there any potential calming that can be done on slopes, or is it simply too steep to manage?
It is something that we found San Francisco has looked at, pushing that guidance beyond the 8% threshold. That's partially why we're comfortable with it being a street block that exceeds the slope, even though we're sticking to the flatter section. So I think we would be willing to revisit it if this location we're proposing isn't successful, but it's not something we found a lot of cities have really pushed on, but San Francisco having their slopes, they definitely have taken a deep look at it and have started to, we found subsequent to the report, have installed on steeper blocks.
Okay.
The examples you gave from San Francisco were slopes of 12 to 13%, and the steeper section of this block, as you said, was 15. So that would be pushing even beyond what San Francisco has done.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Public comment online?
Let me look, hold on. Please raise your hand if you're interested in speaking on this block.
I'll note while we wait that we got one email in support.
Not seeing any hand raised. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to request to speak.
Dial the number on your screen.
There we go.
We've got one now, hold on. Shara, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. My name is Shara, and I was one of the people who got sort of this conversation started after a lot of years. And I mostly just want to say thank you so much for considering this. There's been tremendous excitement on the street with the possibility of slowing things down. I think we moved in about 2 years ago, and I walk my kids to school at Ocean View, and it does feel treacherous trying to cross the street because cars are coming up very fast. And I think notably, a lot of the Google Maps is directing people to cut through Taylor Street just as a left turn rather than using some of the bigger thoroughfares like Pierce or like on the street where the school is at. And so anyway, just mostly just saying thank you so much for considering. I think it's a small street compared to a lot of the rest of Albany, but it has been, I think, a significant safety concern for everybody. And if one speed table isn't enough, I know many of the residents on the northern edge of the street would be interested in more other creative solutions that would be possible for the upper slope. So I know people are a little bit worried about it, but also just incredibly thankful. That's it.
All right, thank you.
No more hands raised.
All right, commission discussion?
I'd like to note that this is a street that's parallel to a number of other streets that have gotten treatment in the past. And at that time, the issue of spillover redirection came up. And so this is an instance where we've followed up and addressed that. And in general, I'm in support of the staff recommendation.
Can we talk a little bit about the center line question? Because I do think the way the paint was installed creates the image of this very wide lane, even though it really is 2 lanes. Is it possible to put a center line in a space that narrow?
There's been recent updates to the MUTCD, the standard for traffic control. I need to check. I think we didn't previously because 8-foot lanes to stripe was too narrow. So the idea was edge lines might make it a little more visually narrow, but with it being edge lines on the outer edge without a middle, it didn't have any real calming effect or narrowing effect.
Yeah, I mean, it may have even had the opposite effect if it creates this kind of bowling alley feeling.
If you'd like to see a different treatment, you could look at the 800 block of Santa Fe, which is wide enough for a center line, but it has the white lines are inside of the parking by several feet, and there are some other lines along that area that create a sense of moving quickly, even if you're not.
I think at the time it predates me, but it didn't meet the threshold or slopes or whatever for the speed hump option, so I'm trying to do something with striping, but I don't think
Yeah.
we were able to do a center line at that time.
I mean, I'm all in favor of the speed hump where it's been recommended. I'm just wondering if we can also do something on the northern half of the block where we are not yet comfortable putting a speed hump. Is there some way to improve the paint treatment that's already been done there to make it more effective?
Is there something in the MUTCD that would allow you to bring the edge lines in and make it look like the street is narrowed a bit?
I think it's the same factor that it's already very too narrow for for striping specifically, both directions, both lanes. So I don't think we would either be able to pinch it on the outside easily, but we can take a look.
I suppose there's always the nuclear option of making it one-way southbound, but yeah, is there some way that we can make sure that we follow up on this? Because it seems like with that long 450-foot run up to Solano that this is, again, at risk of not having the desired impact. So I wonder, I don't know, that would be my concern, is that we keep an eye on it.
We can make a note to do a post-installation traffic survey for this block.
When you survey the speed, are you checking the speed in the flatter section or checking the speed in the steeper section?
We could choose where to place the counters. For this one, if we're interested in understanding, I would say put it halfway between where we put the speed table and the northern end of the block.
That would be in the steeper section. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's more relevant because I think, I think we should go ahead with the speed table as in the recommendation. I don't see any reason not to do that. It's just a matter of whether we need to do more than that in the northern half of the block or whether that one treatment is enough.
Okay.
So I'm curious. You said that most of the speeding was happening in the northbound direction.
Most of the vehicle volume is in the northbound direction. I don't recall the speed profile of northbound versus southbound to really answer that.
So if we wanted to get a little more radical, this is not a collector or an arterial. It might be possible to block entry from the south. If we're having trouble lowering the speed, then reducing the traffic might be to local traffic, who we assume would have an incentive not to speed around their neighbors. Might be a big assumption, but
Do you see that as like a follow-up if we determine like that we should go ahead with this treatment and then consider that in the future if needed?
likely?
So as far as what to do tonight, would anyone recommend anything other than going ahead with the staff recommendation and ensuring a follow-up study to evaluate the speeds on the untreated northern half of the block?
I think that's it.
Wasn't Taylor Street identified in the Complete Streets Buchanan project as a target for a signaled crossing?
I believe it's the block east, but I'd have to double check.
Polk?
That's,
Taylor has the advantage of connecting to the USDA driveway, and Polk doesn't connect to the Ocean View Park driveway.
Right, and also on Buchanan, there's a left-turn pocket for Taylor, which probably make that blocking the traffic even harder, but
Yeah.
that might be a location for traffic lights.
Right, it's a way for people who are coming northbound on the, sorry, I'm blanking, on the frontage road to turn around and get back to the freeway. Right, so you were suggesting initial speed bump and then analysis?
Yeah, I was just trying to gauge if anybody had any suggestion other than that before I make a motion. Okay, I will move to approve the staff recommendation for a speed table and suggest a follow-up study to evaluate speeds on the northern part, steeper part of the block after the speed table is installed.
Second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Tomsky,
Yes.
Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Peng,
Yes.
Commissioner Von Neitigen,
Yes.
Chair Vihil McClanahan.
Yes.
Motion carries. Commissioner Jobin, you may return.
All right. Excuse me. I would want to run out and grab him real quick. Oh, there he goes. Okay, I think we're ready. And we had just wanted a quick update. Honestly, it's slipping my mind why, what aspect of it we wanted to learn about. Something related to funding and red curbs. I'm sorry, dude.
Why don't you let staff introduce it?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So I have some feedback for you. We have asked staff from Satellite Affordable Housing and Cycles of Change regarding the suggestion for active transportation education at the Affordable Housing Project. Feedback from SAHA was that these type of events haven't been well attended in a couple of locations that they have done it in the past. But they did provide feedback for this suggestion. They said to do it soon after the building opens, that educational material separate from an event can be included in a welcome packet if we have material to share with residents, that it would be better to focus the workshops on youth, that if there's not money to purchase bicycles, it could be useful to purchase biking equipment like helmets and lights, and that they've had other buildings where they purchase bike memberships like with Lyft. Cycles of Change staff feedback was that a $2,500 budget would cover a bike rodeo program, that they can customize this to some extent for the target audience and venue. And other update, I did check with my colleagues. The cost estimate is still $100,000 to $150,000 on the question regarding costs for citywide intersection red curb, and that use of general fund revenue through this would not speed up implementation. If we are ready to implement, we can do it as a capital improvement project or amendment to the capital improvement plan. We wouldn't need to wait for a more wholesale update to do that. So the tabled recommendation, as I logged it, is provided here, where the suggestion instead of the access hub was for the 6,000 towards encouraging active transportation at Saha. I will note that the cost estimate is $260,000. Last year's expenditure plan, I think, it exceeded the cost estimate, but no guarantee that we have that same amount for this year, was my only other feedback on that. And with that, I'll hand it back to the commission.
Commission questions?
Can you say more about the bike memberships like with Lyft?
They didn't provide more detail. I think it's similar to, a transit pass, like where as a member of the facility, you are provided with a membership with, a bike share program, if that's operating, often has like a membership fee as well as a per use fee.
But there isn't a bike share program at that location, right?
We do not. We have VO, but they don't, I think, have a membership.
They don't
fee.
have a
It's
membership. So that idea of bike memberships is not applicable to our situation?
There may be a way to have a certain amount of money with VO or something like that we haven't talked to them about that kind of program. But they may be set up to do something like that. We, do have docked bike share neighboring city. It may expand in the future, but we don't currently have a specific program, we would say, at this.
Any other questions?
Did they say how many youths they expect to have in residence in round numbers?
I don't have that information yet, but it sounded like the number of students that cycles could accommodate with an event should be covered.
Is there any public comment?
We have one hand raised. Hold on. Me, go ahead.
You hear me?
Yes.
Hey, it's Amy Smoltz again. I've seen the Cycles of Change programs in action, and they're really fantastic. They truly teach kids and their parents, because a lot of times their parents are watching, practical cycling skills and how to go out on the road and how to ride with traffic and how to make eye contact. It's very practical. It's really, and I think it's it would be a fantastic use of this, which is supposed to go to health and fitness-oriented programs. I think this is a great fit. Unfortunately, we don't have a bike share program, and the VOs are scooters, they're not bikes, so I don't think really most people aren't gonna ride those. They're just not as user-friendly, and they're not good for shopping or doing errands or things like that. So unfortunately, I don't think that would work. So I just think cycles of change is great. And on the other side, I don't think that it's appropriate to use sugar-sweetened beverage money that's supposed to raise funds for health and fitness to fund bands at a one-day event. I don't think it helps keep Albany people fit or healthy or anything like that. I'd rather see it used for items that are long-lasting, like these kids learning how to bike and making it a lifetime skill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no more hands raised.
All right, commission discussion? I suppose additional commission discussion?
Could you bring up the table again when you get a chance? You're trying to do that, okay. Right.
Start on it now.
Good luck with that. Great. So this is our two-tier sort of recommendations, our strong recommendations at the top, and our sort of chiming in with others, I think, other commissions and committees at the bottom. I still feel that we should recommend, along with this recommendation, that long-term crossing guards are moved into the regular city budget, so that we're not addressing it on a yearly basis. I strongly support the bike safety program, and I think if we leave it at $6,000 for encouraging active transportation at Saha, that would cover both cycles of change program and potential purchase of helmets and safety gear, bells, lights, whatever. So I think that would allow staff some flexibility in addressing that. Just as a sort of a sidebar, I've been thinking a lot about Saha, and turns out that the designs that we've looked at previously for Cleveland between Saha and the Buchanan Bikeway is not expected to get installed until maybe a year or two, I think was the quote of time. So that won't be in place as a connection when this opens up. And similarly, on the north side, there's no, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the project is implementing the path north into the park, but that's where the path would end and not go northward on Pierce. Fortunately, cycles of change can address that, but in a future discussion, we might talk about other ways we could support families biking to school, maybe with some increased enforcement of clearing of sidewalks in the area along Cleveland and perhaps Pierce, which has been brought up before. Something we might want to prioritize. End of sidebar. Just for the sake of moving things along, I will propose a motion that we forward this funding recommendation to City Council with the further recommendation that the crossing guard program be moved into the regular budget.
We have a second?
Second the motion.
I don't mean to short circuit discussion if there is some.
We
Did anyone else, I didn't have anything else to add to the discussion.
I have a question. So Ken, have you ever organized a bike bus to school?
Yes, I have.
So that's more based on volunteer-based, right? Like you volunteer to do it.
Usually parents get together to organize that.
Do you think $6,000 will make a difference or make it last longer and make it more frequent and become a thing?
So if the city pays to start a bike bus, you end up with some liability issues.
I understand that.
The whole Safers to School program is predicated on the idea that parents are partnering together. And it's not the school district, it's not, Safers to School is not the city. So, and there,
So say like some parents would like to organize this and form like a small organization. Can city invest $6,000 to them to avoid the liabilities and make this happen? I'm just exploring.
yeah. Well, the other problem is, I mean, what would the $6,000 go to? Would it go to bikes for some individuals? How would you determine who those were? It gets really sticky really fast. A general program that is open to the residents, and depending on the number of families there, might also be open to the neighborhood, depending on how it works out, is a good way to really raise everybody's awareness of what is practical and how to go about doing things, and also introduce people to resources like bike kitchens, which sell rehabilitated bikes at fairly low cost, which can help put it within the budget of many more people.
All right, shall we go ahead with the roll call?
Commissioner Chomsky,
Yes.
Commissioner Javindel,
Yes.
Commissioner McCroskey,
Yes.
Commissioner Peng,
Yes.
Commissioner Von Nidigan,
Yes.
Chair Vigil McClanahan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Commissioner Chomsky mentioned that the electric bicycle and motorized scooter regulation item was put on the agenda by Commissioner Barnes, who is absent today. And I'm wondering if we should move that to next month's meeting when he will hopefully be present.
It's not a time-sensitive item.
I'm fine with continuing it till then.
If I may, I'm not going to be at the April commission meeting. So if I could make a short statement related to this. I'm excited that it's being agendized, and I think we should think concretely in terms of how we communicate speeds especially, and speeds especially along our pathways, including the Buchanan Bike Path and the Ohlone Greenway.
Would you prefer if we tried to continue this to a meeting when both you and Michael are present? Seems like you might have more to say if you had the opportunity.
I don't want to slow down the process.
But it's not time sensitive, then.
Nothing is fast. We can wait.
Yeah, nothing is fast. I don't think this issue is going to be settled in one meeting. I will certainly watch the presentation and contribute it as it comes around again.
Okay.
All right. Do we need a motion for that, or can we just?
The chair can table the item.
All right, so let's just table this until next month and move on to announcements, if any.
I have a few. Active Transportation Plan, Selection Committee is evaluating proposals. We are hoping to get a recommendation to City Council next month. The Jackson Street Bikeway has contracts for design and project management going to council on Monday, so that is moving forward. And AC Transit Realign, materials were on the consent item. There are 2 workshop dates that are now on the Realign website. One is May 23rd at 6 p.m., a virtual workshop, and June 5th, 5 p.m. is the AC Transit Board's special board meeting, but there should be additional outreach engagement in advance of those meetings. Those are my announcements.
All right. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? All right.
Besides the active transportation plan?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna.
I'll just note there was one mention of Commissioner not able to make next meeting since we do have some corridors coming up for discussion with the Santa Fe traffic calming, and Keynes Adams will need to come back to the commission. Both of those are long corridors so we'll need to be dealing with conflict of interest. So if you could let me know if you know you're not going to be at upcoming meetings so we can start thinking about that, that would be helpful.
When there's a long corridor on the agenda, do we recuse for the whole corridor, or do we recuse one block at a time?
If we're talking design for the corridor, I would say we'll have to look at it, but it won't make sense to do design block by block for, at least for Keynes Adams. We'll see where the recommendations are for Santa Fe if they.
So for Santa Fe, it's possible that Ken and I would both have to recuse for the whole discussion.
It's possible. That one is less of providing a facility along the corridor, so it may be more reasonable for that one to be looking at different segments of the corridor. We'll have to see what the design options shape up to look like.
Okay. All right. Well, our next meeting is April 25th. See y'all then. Well, see most of you then.